property negotiation is where you can make the biggest return on any property deal for the smallest amount of time invested. Now, in this part 2 on my series on property negotiation, I'm still in the discovery stage of negotiation. I'm going to go through the last of the internal value steps that you need to take, followed by the questions, most importantly, that you should be asking the agents before you transition out into external discovery. Now, let's get straight into it. Rule 2, which is going to lead on to step number 7, is kill your emotion in negotiation. Try and stay calm. Moving on to this step, I've swapped my location because hopefully no agents can find me here. They're going to hate this, and it's simple. I want you to get the plan B property or the one you like the second most, call up the agent and ask to put a written offer on that property significantly, and I mean 20-30% under the asking price. Now, you're telling me you're crazy. Why are you doing this? Firstly, if you haven't written an offer in a while, or you haven't written an offer at all, it gives you an opportunity to understand what they're going to ask you when writing an offer. The second thing is it allows you to practice your negs, which you learned in the first part of the negotiation video, which is explaining why you can't justify a higher price. And the third part is it will allow you to control your emotions in an environment where the agent is a little bit peeved off that you're writing such a low offer. And these things combined will make a better negotiator in the property deal when you're looking at your plan A property. Agents, don't kill me for this tip. Look, it's probably better to get an offer than no offer on a property. Buyers, be mindful of agents' time. You know, do it at 8. Don't call them up at 8. Do it at 8. Don't call them up at 8 o'clock at night and get them there at 10 o'clock to write an offer that's, you know, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 less than what they're asking on the property. I am losing track. I think it's step 8. This is to know the value of the property or the market value. There's a couple of ways to do this. Obviously, you can just appraise it if you're an agent like me, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily do that. So there are some tricks you could use. You could get an AVM, it's automated valuation from RP Data, or there's a couple of different services online. They're okay and reliable-ish, kind of, depending on the property. The second tip, probably shouldn't tell you this, but sometimes some banks offer free valuations up front on approvals to some brokers. So you could probably maybe ask your broker to help you out, get one done for free, possibly. The third one is just simply pay a valuer. Like, it's a couple $100 to do a straightforward valuation for a valuer. Call around to a few of them, get them to do it. If you're spending 500, 600, 700 grand on a property, spending a couple $100 on a valuation, if you're super keen, is probably worthwhile. And then at least you know what the perceived market value of the property is. But coming back to rule 1, don't let that influence what you want to put your price in at. Step number 9 is know the property from different angles. So what do I mean by that? Well, you kind of want to do a few different things. Firstly, you want to think about all the other buyers. Is it a big block? Is it going to attract developers? What's the zoning? Understand that even if you're never going to develop it, because you might be priced out of the market if you're a home buyer that is at the max budget on a high price property and there's all these developers coming in and you perceive the value of the house cheap because it's run down, but the developers perceive the value of the house high because the land has got much more value than the house itself. So you want to look at all different angles of buyers, but the other thing you want to kind of do is look at the value of the house, but then look at other methods of value. For example, if you are looking at a house that's 3 or 4 or 5 years old, go into the suburb and look at blocks of land and look at house and land packages in the area. And then what I'd like to do is look at the implied land value. So get the building price and you depreciate it generally by about 2.5% every year. And that kind of gives you a benchmark of what it would take to build a new house on a similar block in that area with a depreciated building value. That's one way. If you're an investor looking at a subdivisible site, do your numbers on what it would look like to subdivide the property, sell the land, sell a house. Think about that, because often a developer has got a lot of transaction costs. You have to do the feasibility well, and that's a whole nother video. Step number 9, which is consider value versus your buyer profile, which kind of answers one of our first questions, which is what price should I pay under asking, or what price should I go in on this property? Now, if you're an investor and a home buyer and you have agreed up front you're going to be emotionally attached and you've looked at a whole range of properties, and I'm not saying 2 or 3, you've looked at a lot, and this one really suits your profile, and the valuation has come in, you know, in a range from say 600 to 700, you are probably comfortable paying towards the upper end of your band, especially if you've missed out on some properties, and admit that up front. Also, think about where you sit relative to other buyers. If there's 2 types of buyer which comes through, which is people that love the house and developers, well, if the house is nice and your perceived value is high, you're probably going to knock out all the developers anyway, so you don't have to stress too much about them, which helps in later stages of negotiation if you're competing against another offer, because you might inadvertently ask the agent who the other offer is, and this will give you an idea as to what they're willing to pay. But the biggest pro tip of all with this step is you can't establish where your buyer profile sits relative to fair market value unless you can benchmark against a range of properties. So it is imperative that you go out, whether you're an investor or a home buyer or anything, and look at a lot of properties. Maybe make an offer on a few properties. Do the trick that I suggested before, make a really low offer on a plan B, and get a feel for the market, because if you're saying you really want this house and you haven't missed out on any others, well, what's not to say you don't really want the next house? So you kind of need to start looking at a range of properties. This comfortably answers those two questions. You've logically assessed your buyer profile and the value method, but then you've also applied emotion in terms of what you're willing to pay. So ultimately, if value is X and you are willing to pay towards the top range of that, then feel comfortable in paying the top range of that. As we are moving towards the end of the internal value steps you need to take in the discovery stage of negotiation, I just wanted to quickly summarize what the intent of doing this is. Firstly, we want to make your offer stand out compared to other offers in the market. The second thing we're doing is getting you to devalue what you think that property is worth internally versus other potential opportunities. The third step is that we are logically assessing the value of that property independently through evaluation. And finally, what we're doing is we're applying some emotional framework around assessing how hard you should chase that property based on your own internal value of what you think it is worth. The next step sits between internal value and external value of the discovery stage in negotiation. And that is effectively doing some reconnaissance and asking the agent some questions. So what I'm going to do is go through the questions and go through why I'm asking those questions and what types of information you're trying to find out. I like to ask these questions in private because sometimes the information you can gain from them isn't things that you want other buyers to know. There's two ways to do this. You can hang around towards the end of the home open and ask them when no one else is there, or you can call the agent up after the home open. The first question is, how's the market been in the area, or how you're finding property, or how you're finding the market? Now, this is an opening question. It's just an icebreaker. Look, I don't actually pay any attention to what they say to this. Now, 9 out of 10 times they'll pump up the market. They'll say, oh, it's busier now, or this or that. Again, ignore that. This follows on to the next question, which is, how long has the property been on the market for? Now, again, it's similar to the last question in the sense it's an opener. 9 out of 10 times I don't really pay too much attention to it, but it's always good to ask a question because you would have done your reconnaissance up front in the internal value stage, and it's just making sure the agent is consistent with what your reconnaissance suggests. If, for example, you know the property's been on the market for 3 months and you say to the agent, oh, how long has it been on? They say 2 weeks. So try and find out why there's some inconsistency in the information. 9 times out of 10, your data could be wrong, but sometimes there's some interesting things that get thrown up. For example, you know, the agent might not have been able to do home opens for the first couple of months due to tenants, and they will tell you this. So you need to weigh that up with all the other information that they give. The third question is there anything that isn't council approved or I should know about on the property? Again, not so important, but it adds to your negs. You know, like they might say there's a cubby house that's not approved, or they might say that the patio is not approved, or they might just say they don't know, or they might give you a seller disclosure statement. There's a whole raft of things they could do. Again, the answer's not important, but if you get anything that's not council approved, it's good to add that on the list of the negatives. Remember, the first couple of questions you ask is ultimately just about building rapport. Think about it this way: if you're a police officer interrogating someone, you're not going to ask them if they did the crime up front. You're going to try and build some rapport with them. So I like to just ask a few more questions and just get to know them and have a chat. Then we transition into the more specific questions that we kind of want to know answers to. The first one is, has there been any other offers on the property? Ultimately, this is a benchmarking question, and this can come in handy later on in negotiation. It actually helps answer the question that I talked about at the start of the video, which was, is the other offer the agent talking about legit? So let's just say there's no other offers on the property and you've dug a little bit deeper with this question up front and said, look, is anyone planning to verbally submit anything, or is anyone planning to submit an offer? And the agent goes, no, there's no other offers. You'll be the first one. Okay, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, you then actually formally submit the offer. But between there, you haven't really had much dialogue with the agent. You might have seen the property. All of a sudden, there's another offer. Now, I would push back to the agent and say, well, what's changed? When we spoke, at the start, there was no other offers. What's happened? I would discount that more than when the agent says very much up front, yep, I've received an offer today or yesterday and we're going to submit in 2 or 3 days' time, so if you like it, you need to proceed. That's a strong likelihood there's an offer. Whereas if all of a sudden there's an offer come into play after no one was even looking at it or the agent had no bites, I would suggest that they're just trying to leverage a point. Now, there is no guarantee on this. There's no science around it. It's a bit of an art and a feel, but it just helps you benchmark and get an understanding of where the offer situation sits. Following on from that question, if there are no offers, next thing I would kind of ask them is, seems like a nice place. Why is there no other offers, or why is no one interested in it? Then be quiet. It's actually a disturbed question, so it forces an answer because it's a negative. The other thing is it's a diffuser, because we're saying it's a nice place. You think it's a nice place, you're diffusing a hard question, and then you're saying, why does no one else like it? It forces a response from the agent, and then when you keep quiet, the agent might throw in some information there that you need to know. What I do want to quickly touch on is, if we're at any point in the negotiation process and the agent does say there's another offer, there's some good questions you can ask. Agents are very good at dialogue. Sometimes they suggest another offer, but it doesn't actually mean there's a formal written offer. There's nothing wrong with an agent saying, if they've had a verbal offer, look, we received an offer for X, the sellers didn't even consider writing it up. There are other offers coming, there is another offer, so you need to make sure you put your best foot forward. That hasn't actually told you there's a formal written offer, but it might create some emotional concern that you're going to miss out. So the first thing I'd ask is, has the offer been written up? The next thing is when is the offer, or when has the offer been presented? If it's been 2 or 3 weeks, no offers, and all of a sudden the agent's got an offer and all of a sudden the agent's going to present, again, that's a bit fishy to me. So it's important to know, if it hasn't been presented, why it's not been presented. And finally, if it has been presented, coming back to the first question I suggested, is why hasn't the sellers accepted it? Moving back to the upfront dialogue questions, another one I like to ask is, seems like a nice place, why are they selling? It's structured in a way that there's a diffuser up front, that seems like a nice place, followed by the actual question which you are asking. 9 times out of 10, the agents are trained around this. They won't tell you, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they say, look, they've put an offer on another property and they do need to sell. That gauges their level of motivation, and that's what this question is trying to uncover, is how motivated is the seller based on why are they selling. If you're in good rapport with the agent, another question you might like to ask is, how was the asking price established? Now, this can go 2 ways. Firstly, it's not about what the agent does to justify it, it's about how the agent justifies it. Sometimes the agent might just say, look, that's what the seller wants to accept. The subtext of that dialogue is, I think the seller has overpriced it. I'm not going to say I think it's worth that. So I'm going to say the seller set that price and they're not going to sell for anything less. That probably means the property is a little bit overpriced. If the agent does come back to you with, look, XYZ sold for this, XYZ sold for that, XYZ sold for that, and this is why I think it's that, they have conviction in the price, they are probably a bit more attached to the asking price and where they see value. Ultimately, good agents should be able to do that even if the seller sets a price. They should be able to argue what asking price they've put on the property. Once you get onto the price question, let it go around a bit, but you need to recreate rapport with the agent, because you don't want to just make this seem like a big fact-finding process. Have a chat for a few minutes about different things. Come back to another question, which is, as a ballpark, what do you think they would accept? Now, as a ballpark is a diffuser again. It's not suggesting to the agent you want a specific price, but as a ballpark, what do you think they would accept? Gives you again a guide as to what the sellers would consider. Again, I've had agents say, look, it's on the market for $1 million. They might seriously consider $850 because it's been on the market for a long period of time, particularly if you are in rapport with them. The next question I have in my toolkit, I've adapted a little so you guys can use. It does break rapport with the agent a little bit, so it's important that you deliver it well. Effectively, it is, my circuit breaker thinks that the property is overpriced. They've said that I have to talk to their brother who's a valuer. Where do you think they will see value? Now, there is a bit going on with this question. Firstly, you're blaming the break on report on the circuit breaker, not you. You still have rapport. The second thing is you're saying you are going to call a valuer, so the agent then has to justify it with logic. Ultimately, it's not the agent's answer which matters, it is how defensive the agent is around price that matters. If the agent believes the property is overpriced, this question might show that they're defensive. If the agent has conviction in the price, they may not be as defensive. And this can be used at later points in negotiation in order to assist you with where you should be putting your offer in at based on where you think value is or where the agent thinks value is. The next question is pretty straightforward. It's outside of price, what is important to the seller? Short settlement, long settlement, just throw in some ideas. The answers that you gain here again are good in structuring your offer because they may not care about price, they might want a long settlement because they need to find another home. So these are the types of things that you need to take into consideration when writing an offer. There are probably millions of questions which you can ask an agent, and I've just thrown in some key ones which I ask. The main things I'm trying to gain from the subtext of the discussion is, how hard is the agent pushing for the sale? How keen are they to get the sale? Because that might give you an idea of how keen the seller is. If the agent thinks they're going to get a deal, they're pretty keen to push a deal. The second thing is the seller actually motivated? Are they wanting to sell this property and have they determined the price? And finally, how much conviction does the agent have in the asking price? Do they think it's fair value or do they think it's overs? And this will help gauge where you should submit your offer at.